Hi, everyone, and welcome to another exciting edition of Words, Images, and Worlds. I am so glad on this episode to be joined in Zoom space not by one, but by two authors who craft for young readers in really interesting ways. I have Heather Capps with me, hey Heather, as well as Malia Maunakea. Malia, Heather, thank you for jumping in, joining, and taking a few minutes out of what I'm sure is a busy day.
Thank
Thanks for
you.
having us.
Appreciate
Absolutely.
it.
My pleasure. My pleasure. Now, you have very official bios, and so if it's okay, I'll briefly read those. Heather writes upper middle grade books about history, social justice, science, and magic, all at the same time, like one book or that could
Yes,
be
as a matter
interesting.
of fact. Yes, two of them now.
Yeah, she is a mother of two and an education equity activist. That's how you say that. As a biracial author, Heather is passionate about creating diversity in publishing. Her critically acclaimed debut novel, it's right over there, over your shoulder, Indigo and Ida, has been called moving and inspiring. Received two-starred reviews, made book list 2023 top 10 first novels for youth, and was a finalist in the Jane Addams 2024 Children's Book Awards. Her next book, The Rule of Three, publishes in August, this coming August 2024. And then Malia is a Kanaka Mole native Hawaiian whose middle grade Hawaiian legend filled story. Am I saying this right, Lei?
Lay.
Lei. And the fire goddess was featured on the Today Show. Wow. Chosen as a notable social studies trade book by Children's Book Council, named Book of the Year by the School Library Journal and Center for the Study of Multicultural Children's Literature, and was a Young Adult Library Services Best Audiobook of the Year. The sequel, Lay and the Invisible Island, comes out June 2024. Malia is also the author of nonfiction Backpacking with Children. So in good company here with the Today Show. Basically, we're the Today Show at this point. This is great.
Basically, yeah.
Basically.
Basically, yeah.
Wonderful. I feel like the real estate just went up just slightly. Uh, so thank you both for taking some time and talking with me. I shared a couple of questions, and I'm glad to jump in and chat with you. But by means of a first question, and we can sort of go in alphabetical order, or we can go in order of who jumped into the Zoom first. What drew you to writing for young readers and to each other?
I'll start. Writing for young readers was really a passion project. You were talking earlier, Jason, about this podcast of yours being a passion project. For me, it was as well. I actually started in the young adult space. And like everybody who writes their first book, my first book was terrible and also just wasn't quite the voice I wanted and wasn't appropriate for my two kids at the time. Both of my eldest was not quite a middle grade reader yet. He was entering that space, and my little one was, still eating her books more than anything else. So um, I decided the middle grade space was better because I wanted my kids to be able to read my books and want to read my books. So that's basically how I ended up in middle grade. And I have a lot more reasons for liking and being in middle grade that I can get to later on. But what drew me to talking to Malia about writing and wanting to be on panels and things with Malia is that we do live in sort of the same space of using certain literary devices in order to make certain topics accessible to young readers and also for empowering diverse voices for young readers.
Mhm. Malia, anything to add?
I jumped into this writing thing after some other careers I had, and I started first with nonfiction and writing the backpacking book because I don't have a background in anything to do with publishing or writing. I have a background in engineering and in real estate and that sort of stuff. So I tried to stick with what I know, and that was backpacking with my kids at the time and writing more research-based things. When I got into writing with children, I wasn't sure if I could write fiction. So I started really small with chapter books, and I figured if I could write 8,000 to 10,000 words, sort of the Magic Tree House, Jack and Annie sort of books, maybe I could make a go with it of it. But I got nothing but rejections. Kind of like Heather said, your first book is not always your best book. So instead of continuing down that chapter book path, I decided to try middle grade because my son at the time was very into Percy Jackson and loved everything to do with Greek mythology. And he is part Hawaiian, but I'm raising him in Colorado. So I would try to tell him about our culture and our stories and our legends. And he, much like Anna in my story, didn't want to listen to me and our stories. So I set out writing this book for my son who loved mythology, thinking that if I could get it on a shelf next to Percy Jackson, maybe there was a shot that he would read it.
That's funny when you said that about trying to teach him the stories. Immediately, I thought, "Oh, Lay, that's autobiographical. You're telling your son's story." Because that's
Pretty
such a
much.
lovely back and forth between Lay and her tutu trying to tell her these things, and she's like, "I just want to go take the pictures of me in front of all the tourist sites." So
Yes, I really did lean heavily on my experience with my kids and also my experience growing up to just put it all in there because again, write what you know, it was my first real fiction middle grade length story. So I turned to myself and tried. Where did you pull from?
well, a couple different things. I should say that writing for me is Act Three. I spent 15 years as a television news reporter, and you would think that because I wrote for a living as a reporter, that the writing would have been an easy switch. But in fact, or I should say, writing fiction. But there's so many things that are really different. You know, writing for television news, you're writing for video, so you are assuming that the video will carry along the narrative. You're also writing in these really short snippets. Television news stories are typically between 1 minute and 30 seconds and 2 minutes, although most of my producers will tell you I could never make it in that time. I always had so much to say. So books are clearly a happier space for me. So I pulled from that experience for Indigo, as a matter of fact. In my debut novel, Indigo, one of my, or the primary character, is a middle school reporter. And I not only was a reporter as an adult, but I also was the editor of my newspaper in high school. So there's a lot of what I know and what I used to do in there as well.
It makes it a lot easier when you're starting with a basis that you don't have to research the entire career or the entire hobby from
Right.
scratch.
So is Lay, you said you had written a chapter book first. Is Lay your first full-length middle grade novel, or did you have a few that are sitting on the shelf waiting to be resuscitated?
No, that was my first, believe it or not. It really helped that I think the core story idea was interesting enough that I submitted it to a bunch of mentorships and ended up getting some really amazing mentors in the craft process. So Andrea Wang, who wrote Many Meanings of Melon and Summer at Squee, along with Watercress and a bunch of picture books, offered to mentor me. And Alan Gratz, who is, New York Times best-selling author
Yeah,
of Refugee and all of the wonderful things. I think
one of my
Heroes
daughter's
is the one
favorite
that just
authors.
came out
Yeah.
with Pearl Harbor. So I got to have both of their perspectives, which are so very different. Andrea was amazing helping me see the cultural side and how to make this beautiful character-based story kind of become more three-dimensional. And Alan was an amazing genius at the plot points and the pacing and making sure it was a page turner and having cliffhangers at the end of every chapter. So bringing both viewpoints together really helped make Lay something of my own, but a lot of hand holding.
That's great. That's amazing that you had Alan Gratz as a mentor. That's just like the golden egg right there.
It really was. It
Yeah,
really was.
yeah.
And as somebody that lives in North Carolina currently, that's a name that gets shared around here a good bit.
Yeah,
Kids
for
really
sure.
connect with his books. Absolutely. Yeah. And I love the community aspect, both in terms of the way that you talk with each other and the way that you've clearly supported each other in your journey. And you have these people that have come along, because some people say writing is this solitary process, but seems like there's some community there as well.
Well, we had, a truly wonderful debut group that came together on Discord, and that's how Malia and I met because we had not, I was in a mentor group that was not connected to our debut year, our debut cohort. I was in a mentorship program called Pitch Wars, which no longer exists, but it was a contest that you could apply to that if you got in, if you got selected by one of the participating authors, you would get a chance to have your entire book mentored and then entered into an agent showcase.
Mm.
So
It's
it
like the
was
creme de
amazing.
la creme of mentorships. I did not get into that one.
That surprises me. That does surprise me, actually. I just, when you said that you had gotten those mentorships, I just assumed that you didn't even apply because
Oh, I sure did.
so
That was
much.
my first one, and then I applied to the other two while we were waiting because you have like a month to wait to hear if you get in. Yeah.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
Oh, fun. Sorry, keep going.
No, I mean that's I think to the point that you're making, mentorships are crucial. So, I did start Indigo and Ida is actually my fifth book. I wrote my first ill-fated YA book with zero help, zero oversight, zero, one of the many reasons it was terrible. And really took advantage of the fact that this online community exists. Um, there's so much that's available, just little teeny contests that will get someone to take a look at your query or your first page or whatever. There's so much out there, but that Pitch Wars really did create a big, deep community. And huge thanks to Chad Lucas, who is a Canadian author who wrote Thanks a Lot Universe. He was my mentor. And so I truly believe it was because of Chad that the book, found a home with an agent and then with a publishing company, and then Discord happened. And we have Malia, I would say, I mean, I actually have to admit I'm not on the Discord channel anymore because I got overwhelmed and there's too much, but I think it's a really amazing group that came together and really did full-throatedly support each other. There was no backbiting or infighting or, we were all there to cheer each other on and support. I love that.
Yeah, I think it can be hard because we all do have our own journeys. We all do have different, you hear about mid-list versus lead title versus whatever. So when you're in a big debut group, you kind of see that firsthand where some titles might have a lot more marketing oomph behind it, and other titles maybe not so much. And everybody just has a different experience their debut year, which mentally can be straining. And folks do have to take a break from social media from time to time for sure. But knowing that we all had each other's back and there was no viciousness or ickiness, I think really led to a feeling of strong camaraderie and the desire to do panels and do like collaborative efforts going forward.
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
In a moment of like cosmic irony, I just recorded a talk with Chad Lucas as well.
Oh
How
my God.
funny is that? How
He's
funny
just
is
a
that?
lovely, lovely human being, isn't he? I am such a
Absolutely.
big fan. I just love him.
So I love the positive space that you create, and you talked about doing panels, collaborating. So that leads me to the thought of working in classrooms, advancing literacy. Anything that you'd like to share around your work in that?
For the debut or not debut, for my second book that I have coming out on June 4th, I'm actually I'm trying to create these literature celebrations in both Hawaii and Colorado, my two kind of home states.
Mm.
And the theory was that anybody in the state can apply and create these 2-minute videos telling me, why they enjoyed Lay, and then doing putting their creative hat on and doing a piece of fanfic, what would you change in the story? What kind of character side quest would you create? Tell me how you envision this going. And from that, I put together a group of 5 volunteers from different organizations around the state that relate to publishing and literacy, and had them judge the videos and the applications, because heavens knows I can't be in charge of picking the winners. But we got 5 winners in Hawaii. So I'm super excited to be having this book party coming up in June, that's at the children's, oh, they're going to be mad at me because I'm going to mess up this name again. Children's Literature Festival, something like that. But yeah, it's going to be a big book party, and I'm going to be on a paddle with a bunch of kids to get kids excited about reading and talking about books, and getting their family pumped to support them in their reading efforts.
That's so exciting. That sounds like so much fun.
Yeah,
That's awesome.
yeah. Lovely,
How about
lovely.
you, Heather? Have you been doing a bunch of school visits, or what's your jam? Where do you like to meet students?
Yeah, so I do love to meet students at schools. That I really, I am a true extrovert. I get energy from being in groups of people, and so I love that. So I spent my book is set in Minnesota. That's where I did the majority of my growing up, not all of it, but the majority of it. And so the combination of Black History Month and being set in Minnesota had me spend the first half of February in Minnesota doing school visits there, and it was just fantastic, and I loved it. And I've done school visits here. I live in Northern Virginia now, and I do school visits around here. I'm doing a virtual visit in Louisiana on Friday, so I spend time in person and virtually. And I'm looking forward to my next book, The Rule of Three.
Mhm.
As you were noting in my bio, Jason, publishes in August. So that's, for some school districts, right as school is starting, and for some it's right before. So I'm gearing up and hoping to be able to really jump in and do a lot of exciting school visits. And I'm also going to get a chance to go be part of the author showcase at the annual convention for the National Association of Black Journalists. That's in the end of July, the beginning of August. So I'm actually really excited about that. Get to go to Chicago and talk books and talk all books and my books. So
That's really perfect timing for you. All of it's kind of culminating at the
yeah,
same big
yeah.
moment. I love it.
It is. It is. And I'm super excited because as part of my swag pack, authors are always interested in trying to find fun things that they can send along for pre-orders to entice people to pre-order their books. And my main character in The Rule of Three is a baseball player. He's a pitcher, just like my son. So he's modeled after my son. And I work just in the process now of working with the illustrator who did my cover. I asked him or contracted with him to do some more character sketches, and I'm creating baseball trading cards. So anybody who pre-orders will get baseball trading cards for the main character, his bestie, and his father's bestie. So really, really good stuff.
So cool.
Love that idea.
Yeah.
One thing I've really enjoyed doing, but kind of struggle finding connection pieces for, are those virtual visits, right? Because technology is amazing. You're able to reach so many more people than in the past, but how do you get that word out? How do you connect with teachers and educators to let them know that this is a resource available and that you would love to talk to their classrooms?
That really is a big challenge. I think one of the places that I have tried to put the word out that I am available for virtual visits is on that, oh shoot, what is the name of For the Love of Middle Grade? It's a private
Oh, yes,
group
yes,
on
yes.
Facebook.
On
Yeah,
Facebook.
yeah. And also, I do work with a booking agent, and every now and then, when I'm trying to focus on a specific theme like Black History Month, she's not a publicist, so but she does do extra outreach on my behalf if I ask her to. I'm not a big enough person name yet to have a publicist. One day I hope to have a publicist. I'd really like to outsource all of the work. Who can do all of that for me? Have you done that, Malia? Are you working with a booking agent?
I do not have a booking agent. I don't think I've done enough yet to really need one, and I'm really bad at delegating. Honestly, I'm such a I don't know if control freak is the right word, but I'm somewhere between control freak and like normal.
Right.
So there, and yeah, so I just don't know, because a lot of times and this might all get cut, which is completely fine. But sometimes what I've heard is that they come in after you've already made the connect,
Mm,
after you've kind of scheduled something or had that initial conversation. They'll come in to finalize the details and plan the like little intricacy parts. I need help on the connect piece,
right,
and that's
right,
not their job.
right,
So I'm
right,
still
right.
trying to figure out where the value add.
We can chat about this offline. It doesn't
Sorry,
have to work like that, but yeah,
derail.
yeah, yeah. No, that's good. It's good. Actually, for anybody who's watching this podcast for craft or for what do I do after I get published, this is good information to have.
Right.
It really
And for
is.
any teachers, feel free to reach out to us.
That's
Yeah,
right. It does
exactly.
go on YouTube and Spotify and all those places. So absolutely. Yeah. And this is also just an example of kind of the relationship, the mentorship, the collaboration that you can have as an author creating community. And I love how both of you talked about having a child in mind, having your child in mind, having children in mind, and even inviting children to record themselves and think about expanding the world that you've created. That's such a cool way of reaching and connecting with readers.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So going with that idea of keeping young readers in mind, anything that in particular you hope your books create, accomplish, or that you can kind of share with readers through what you're publishing?
I think, one of the things that I frequently say during these school visits is that one of the reasons I wrote Indigo and Ida, one of the reasons I made the connections between Indigo, my fictional character, and Ida B. Wells, who's a real person, a very important investigative journalist in the 19th century and early 20th century, is because of two things. One, there are some real ties between what Ida B. Wells was writing about in the 19th century and what we're still talking about today. And it's important to me to show those ties, to show those connections, because I do believe what we often say about history, which is if we know where we've been, then we know where to go, where we need to go. And we know that it's time now to do something different because what we're doing isn't working in terms of some of these really difficult conversations. But
Mhm.
also because I'm looking for opportunities for hope. I tell the readers one of the things that Ida B. Wells said that Indigo really picks up on is that you need to shine a light on the truth. And I always encourage my students, the readers, to shine that light, to be the spark that recognizes where we've been and moves us into the next space, to be those change makers. So I'm not sure if I exactly answered your question. I got all excited about about talking to those readers, but that was what came to mind when you asked.
Sounds great. Sounds perfect.
I wrote with sort of two pieces in mind. The first piece is that I wanted to write a book that helped kids from Hawaii feel seen, and have them have characters who talk like they do and look like they do and eat the same foods that they do and go to those kinds of places, all in that story. But I also wanted to give people who might just go to Hawaii for vacation or might have just heard of Hawaii and never been there before a peek behind the tourist curtain, and what is it actually like to live there? What are some of the things people living there face? um what's beyond the picture perfect postcard glitzy image of Waikiki. that was one side. And then the other side was just helping kids understand that they are enough, and no matter how they identify, oh my, it picked up my hand. No matter how they
That's fancy.
identify, no matter how they identify, whatever they're struggling with, they are enough. I think that's super important. You can't quantify it. There's not a number that makes you enough in any sense of the word. It comes from within, and you can figure that out when you're 40 like I did, or when you're Anna and 12.
So important. So important. I love that.
So I don't typically do a compliment and appreciation time. It's not a typical feature on the show, which feels like a very Letterman thing to say. But I'm curious, any joy, any praise or moments of joy you want to recognize about the work that the other person does?
I really enjoyed Heather's ability to weave the past and present together and to create two such vivid characters that are so fleshed out and so well-rounded, and having both of their arcs come together, and showing Indigo how to be a strong person and fight for essentially the truth, and all those great journalistic instincts that she has. I thought it was really well put together and woven together seamlessly.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you so much. And speaking of weaving together seamlessly, I actually appreciated the same thing with your ability to give us these fantastic creatures and I'm not going to remember the names of all of them, I apologize, but that fabulous lizard with the scales. Say that again.
Mo'o.
Mo'o. I love the way you create these characters that are legendary creatures and give us all of the stories of how, without giving spoilers, we've got, at this point, she's still calling herself Anna, who's looking for her best friend, Kaipo. Am I saying it right?
You are.
And she's working hard to piece together these bits of legend, which we're learning with her. Well, she's learning a lot of them again because she's heard them at her tutu's feet, but she's really sort of for the first time buying into them because she has to in order to find her friend. And I love that that is the way that we who don't know these legends get into the conversation. And they're funny. This bat is hilarious, and they're back and forth between her and the bat and her and Mo'o and even in her and Tutu. I mean, they start off pretty contentious, but the humor, I think, makes it so accessible and so relatable. And I just really, it takes a lot to make me, well, I shouldn't say that. It doesn't, I laugh easily, but I read a lot of books. We read for a living. So I'm not always necessarily an easy mark for laughter or for tears. And I definitely was hooting out loud at some of her back and forth, especially with the bat, making the jokes. And do you see what I did there? And oh my God, very good stuff. Yeah.
Yay. Thanks. Originally,
Comedy
the
is
bat
hard,
in
right?
my head was supposed to be a boy, and I wanted him to be like Danny DeVito.
Oh,
So different.
that's so
That's what
funny. Oh my
ended up
gosh,
being.
I can hear that. That's great.
Nice. This sounds like a lovely book club to be a part of, where you get to talk with each other about the craft and the process, and then you also get to read books along the way.
Yes.
It's pretty much the best life ever.
It
Like,
really
Right.
is. It really
other than
is.
all the stress.
Right.
There is that, of course.
Yes. It's the truth, the life of book publishing is that at a certain point it does become hopefully the way that you can sustain. Unfortunately, it's not my only job. I actually do teach as well. So that's part of the stress is being able to balance the time for being creative and loving that process. And also, putting on my big girl hat and going to teach so that I can keep paying the mortgage and feeding my children like I'm supposed to do. So
Yeah, they frown on not feeding children, it turns out. So yeah.
Yes.
They
Yes.
do.
In case listeners out there did not know, absolutely. Yes. The creative life is one of balance. by all
Yeah.
Yes.
means.
Yes.
Yeah. So you both have book birthdays that you're celebrating this summer. I'm curious to hear about these books that are coming out into the world. And then I always give space if people want to talk about projects that they're thinking about that are on the way, as well as connections that people can make, reaching out to you online, in person. We've already mentioned school visits as being a potential thing. So curious about anything that you'd like to share in that regard.
Well, I'll tell you a little bit about The Rule of Three, which is coming out in August again. It is the story of Wyatt, who's a baseball player, like I said, modeled after my son. Wyatt discovers that, or suddenly manifests an ability to create smoke whenever he is stressed out. So this book is magical realism, and he learns that this smoke, which is actually something his father also does, but he never expected to inherit the trait. He learns that both his and his father's smoke is connected to some difficult family history. And at the same time that he's manifesting this family, this hereditary trait, he also is having a really tough time with his best friend, another pitcher on his baseball team. She's been feeling really frustrated with him. And so he's isolated, he's alone, he starts being vigilante with his smoke and sort of superhero-y, but ultimately needs to come to terms with the history that causes the smoke. He needs to work with his father to heal and to find out whether he can repair his friendship with his best friend. So I'm excited about it. It's magical realism. It's also history. There's a historical story that I weave in, just like I did with Indigo and Ida. And it's baseball. I love baseball. So
Nice,
Cool.
nice. Love that.
Do you want to talk about like the next thing that you're working on too and how to contact you, or should I go with my book coming out and then we'll back and forth again?
yeah, I'll do that. You can reach me at heathermurphycaps.com. That's my website. And you can reach me on Instagram. My handle is at HMC Writes. That's also my Twitter handle. I don't really go on Twitter very much anymore. I kind of burned out on Twitter for all the reasons you might imagine. But I'm definitely on Instagram and sometimes I'm on TikTok. So those are the best ways to reach me. Definitely my website. I try to keep that up to date, and it's definitely the place to go to reach me for school visits. So thank you.
Ooh, do you want to talk about who your booking agent is? Should they reach your booking agent somehow, or is that all through your website?
That's on the website. So if you
Okay.
go to my author visit page and you click on, let's schedule a visit, it actually automatically gets routed to my
Oh,
booking agent, Sarah DeVore at How Now. Yeah,
so
Wonderful,
easy. I
wonderful.
love
easy,
it.
easy peasy. Yeah.
Seamlessness.
And how about you, Malia? What are you working on? Or tell us about about the second installation of Lay, I guess.
Yeah. So, in lay one, something goes missing at the end of the book that really impacts the well-being of one of the characters. So in lay two, Lay is determined to get that item back because it is all her fault that it went missing in the first place, and she has to save this character. It deals with a lot of guilt, a lot of forgiveness, a lot of friendship issues. As a new character, you'll be able to see on the cover, there's a new girl character, Kaukahi, who is a fierce fashionista who's always concocting the most incredible outfits. Um, but she is a very independent, strong-willed person too. So how do you work together as a team when you might be button heads quite a bit? Because it turns out you're more similar than you might actually realize.
Mm.
And you might be the problem. So, so that's a lot of that. It's really fun. A lot more Hawaiian legends, a lot more Hawaiian history. We get to know a lot of traditional Hawaiian methods for fishing and for bird catching. Like I tried to delve into the culture a bit more, with a culminating event that is a fun one that happens every summer. And I used to participate in every summer, a big parade down Waikiki. So I needed to have that in there.
That's so cool. I can't wait to read it.
It, I like it. It's very big and bright in my head, where the first one was a lot more shadowy and lava and that kind of thing. This is like,
Mhm.
I mean, the cover reminds me of Lisa Frank, if you're my age. It's just rainbows and brightness and exciting. Yeah.
That's so
I'm
cool.
at, where am I? I'm at Malia Maunakea on Instagram and Twitter X and TikTok, but mostly Instagram, and then just maliamaunakea.com for my website. And that's where I have free discussion guides for educators or anybody who wants some fun activities to do with the book, and also free pronunciation guides, because I know that this is a different language. So I have all of the words said out loud so you can follow along. Yeah. And activities to do.
Very
Wonderful,
cool.
wonderful.
Yeah.
Anything else on the horizon that you'd like to mention in terms of work? If not,
Do you have,
that's also totally fine.
do you have
I'm
Lay 3?
working on like, I have lots in my head. So I am I'm working on a third middle grade right now that I hope will get released at some point. I don't know. It's always fingers crossed. Hopefully somebody likes it enough
Right.
for
Yeah.
it to be a real book in the future. That one is not part of the Lay series. It's a totally new main character, totally new issue. It's Yeah, that one's really fun. And I'm trying my hand at YA. So we will
Nice.
see how that one goes. I have a historical fiction YA that's like 1800s historical, and I have another contemporary YA that's, yeah, we'll see. Lots of projects.
Yeah, yeah, that's great.
Cool,
That's great.
cool.
I'm in a little bit of the same space as you with book 3. That is, my first two are standalones. This is also a standalone, but it's a different genre. I've been doing these historical fiction slash magical realism. This is definitely more commercial than my other two, and I'm just received notes back just 2 days ago from my agent. So I'm about to dive in and do what needs to be done to make it better. And then we're going to go on sub with it. So that's a scary place to be. Please like this book. And then I have another middle grade project that I've got sort of on deck after we see what happens with that, or at least while it's on sub, I'll start writing that. And like you, Malia, with venturing into different categories, I actually have 2 adult books that I pitched to my agent, and she likes them. So at some point or another, I will get going on those. That's probably not right away, just because I want to do this other MG book while this other one's on sub. So yeah,
So fun. I
yeah,
love it.
yeah, yeah.
I have 3 compliments. First of all, gratitude for the time. Thank you for the time and the conversation. I so very much appreciate the creating and the fact that you're both continuing to support each other and challenge each other in creating, which is very cool. I love the emphasis on readers and the attention that you place on who your audience is and the ideas and the power of the written word. And then I also love the fact that your work is just fun. Magical realism and mythology. Those are just places that I loved as a kid and just continue to enjoy. So many thanks to you both. Did we miss anything in the recording that you want to make sure to share before we close out?
I don't think so. I think definitely reach out to us. We love school visits.
Oh, yes, please. Please. All the reach outs, we have our contacts. But for any writers that are looking to find community, there's the Middle Grade Hub. If you go on Twitter, I know it's dying a slow death, but you can find us, MG Hub, and we can help you find that community if you're a middle grade writer. If you're not, I got nothing. Good luck.
They're out there somewhere.
Yeah.
And I will, of course, for the audio episode for listeners out there, I'll make sure to link your sites and information in the podcast description. And for those of you that are enjoying the video, on the very next screen after we close this, there will be a nice page that has your websites linked as well.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having us, Jason. It's been
Thank you,
delightful.
Jason.
A pleasure. Anytime.